Okay, so I thought that I would try and do a brief history of the American musical. And so I have chosen 10 shows that I feel to be the most influential shows in history. And we're just going to go right through this. So, show number one, which, special effects, I know. I believe that there's no point really in starting pre-Showboat when talking about the history of musical theater, and because it was actually a Ziegfeld show, and people went there and were expecting the Follies, but then they got this storyline, and the thing that is was so unique about Showboat is that it actually dealt with some pretty heavy topics, like interracial marriages and things like that, and death, and it was kind of a heavy show, but had songs that fit the storyline, like this. Fish gotta swim and birds gotta fly. I gotta love one man till I die. Can't tell when that man of mine. And then also had a huge chorus. And the other big thing about this was it was the 30s, and so interracial casts weren't something that was widely done. And so, to have a cast of half white people, half black people, even though they may have had to use, different entrances and have separate dressing rooms or whatever, they were still on stage together. And the fact that the most well-known song from the show is actually written for one of the African-American characters. Paul Robeson was the original Joe. Which I think it's interesting that in the original, they didn't do cast recordings back then. They just kind of recorded the songs later. And he says darkies all work, and in the show he didn't. And so a lot of times for the recordings in those days, they would have to change the lyrics to be less offensive. But for some reason when you did it in the show, it wasn't offensive. Okay, moving on. Rodgers and Hammerstein's Oklahoma. And the reason that this is important is that it built upon what had already begun with Showboat, that had a storyline with music that actually fit into the storyline. But the thing about Showboat is that the songs didn't further the plot, they just kind of fit in with the current mood of the story. With Oklahoma, you had songs that furthered the plot. Someone would be like, "Hey, Ado Annie, what's wrong?" And she'd be like, "I'm just a girl who can't say no. I'm in a terrible fix." And the other thing about Oklahoma was that it had a dream sequence, a dream ballet, and that was the first show to do that as well. And so it kind of took these things, these big spectacle shows, and kind of gave it a storyline and songs that furthered the plot, that actually were we're not just stopping for this song is actually going to help out the storyline.